Okay.
I'm not going to use. I'm not eating it again. So
I wouldn't.
No,
I wouldn't. No.
I will.
Hey, everybody, you're listening to Business Lunch, a podcast for anyone who wants to not think about work while thinking about work. We discuss some of the biggest issues facing the wide world of business management today. Also, we talk about lunch. Welcome to our first Valentine's Day episode. This is a dark Valentine's Day episode. It's called How to Break Up with Bad Software. On Valentine's Day, we don't like to think about breakups. We like to think about getting together. We like to think about the commitments we've made.
The breakup leads to a new beginning.
That's exactly where I was hoping we would think about this. So we're seeing this as a positive thing. How to break up with bad software is another way of saying, well, you want to move on to something that ultimately is going to work for you. If something isn't working, then you gently let it go and you move on to something else. So really, when your software doesn't work for you anymore, you've got to say goodbye. So let me frame this issue for everybody. Every business has some sort of management style software that they use, and especially software that works for individual processes, things like scheduling, task management, accounting, whatever. A lot of people have different applications that they use. However, there are dozens of reasons software can become outdated or lose the functionality that your organization requires to grow. For any number of reasons, software that maybe used to work for you doesn't work anymore. Or software that you have that you got because you thought it was a good idea, now it's not quite so good. So this episode, we're going to talk about how to end your relationship with software that isn't working for you. So, okay, guys, I want to open up by asking you, how do we define a bad relationship with software?
It depends. Now, thinking of what defines a bad relationship really comes down to is, I'd say, is it doing more harm than good? Or even worse, is it even doing any good? Or you look at it as, is there something else out there that is better for you? I mean, you got to look out for you in this situation. You do you. And that's what you got to do is find identify what's bad, identify what's hurting you, where it's hurting you, and, identify the true cost of keeping it going. Like, look at your sunk costs and look at, how much more it's going to cost in the future to continue operating in this toxic environment.
So I know you have a lot of questions today that you're going to ask us about this, and I'm smiling. But my response to this one, and probably the others, is I liken it to a personal relationship, right? To me, it's the same. If you're not getting out of it what you're putting into it, then there's a good chance that that's probably not going to last, right? So I like to use that as an analogy, right? So I'm putting in a lot of effort to it, and it's not giving me back what I need to be successful throughout that. That's the same with like a relationship. You want something back from what you're giving in your relationship, right? And if that's not equal, or you're not thinking that you're getting back what you need, I think the same thing happens in business and with software. And you can even extend this from not just a software relationship, but from a client relationship too, right? So clients, same way. I mean, if you're not getting what you need out of it and able to continue to grow and get better, that's I think it's very similar.
Well, let me dig into this question a little bit because we all have experience with software. What are some of the most common problems people experience with their software?
Let's see. One is it just doesn't do what it used to do for things getting outdated.
Mm-hmm.
Things break down. That usually happens
So hold
a lot
on. You
more.
said it doesn't do what it used to do. It always does what it used to do. You're changing.
Not necessarily.
It's not keeping up with you.
The exception to that is integrations, where there's integrations keep failing, or or other things might be if it's a server-based subsequent patchings on the servers means it's going to break down and lose connectivity. Mm-hmm. But to what you were saying, absolutely, you're growing.
Yeah,
but that's
you're
not.
growing, but the software is not, and I think that's a key.
Absolutely,
yeah, I think possibly. I mean,
that makes sense.
It's you look at one of my favorite quotes of all time is and I'm probably going to botch this now that I'm being recorded, but to improve is to change, and to perfect is to change constantly, something along the lines, something like that by Winston Churchill. We as humans are always trying to get better, for the most part, but the software is not going to get better unless you allow it to get better. And whether it's the concept of you're having a software that's going to grow with you, or you're going to have a software that's stagnant, it's not going to grow with you. You're going to improve, and you're going to need something that's at the level you are, well, that's holding you back.
Yeah, no, that's it.
So
I have nothing to add to that.
I'm thinking a lot about personal relationships here.
Right. See what I mean?
I think the metaphor.
It fits, right?
That's why I created the metaphor for this episode.
It fits perfectly.
That is not lost on me. So to that point, why do we stay in bad relationships with business software? I'm not talking personal here. Why do businesses, even if they know in the back of their business minds that the software isn't working, why are they so hesitant to explore?
And I'm going to say it's going to be probably the same reason for humans as is for relationships.
Sure.
Sunken cost.
Yeah, well, no, I don't. I'm not.
That's always how I think
I'm
about it.
I'm not even talking about cost as in a financial aspect.
It's comfortable.
It's you've already invested all this time, all this energy, all the process and things over the time. You've invested all of this being into this thing. Mm-hmm. And you're like, I don't want to acknowledge and admit defeat in this thing.
It's comfortable for me.
Yeah.
That's what happens. I think you get comfortable. And so whether it's the, the costs and what you put into it, or just it's just comfortable. You don't want to go through the process again. I don't want to go into the dating world again. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go into looking for software again. And again, depending on how big your organization is,
that's not what
change
you do.
Is difficult, and it's difficult to make it happen across an organization. So,
especially the bigger you get in the organization is absolutely key with that. I mean, unlike in a personal relationship, you can move out of the bad relationship without moving into a new one.
Mm-hmm. Right. You can.
But as far as for software for a company goes, you don't necessarily get that option per se. Yeah. You can't really run a company today without software.
You can't have your me time. I'm just gonna work on myself for a year. That doesn't really work for organizations.
For an organization, especially if you're out there in charge of an organization. Yeah. Don't take the time.
You can't go backpacking across Europe.
Don't take a break. Don't take a 3-month break before you start dating another.
You can't find yourself. It doesn't work. So it's an important distinction to make. Okay, so we know when it's time to move on because we reached that point where we're not getting the value anymore. We're not really able to grow in the ways we want to. That makes sense. So what steps would you recommend that organizations take for trying out new software, right? We're saying change is hard. It's hard. We don't want to always get out there and look at the new stuff. But if we know that we have to, how should we approach it?
I think... it's similar to, I think we had a previous podcast where we talked a little bit about, approaching something like this. And I think it's understanding what your needs and really defining that, sitting down with all the right people in your organization. And the right people isn't always management, right? A lot of times you're going to find, especially when you're going through change management, is the users. Mm-hmm. What do they need, right? How do they interact with the current software? You need to know that. And that'll help you define what you need going forward, right? And then the process is going out and finding that software. And again, always not the easiest thing, but it can be necessary. It's going to be helpful, and hopefully it's helpful for you going forward. And the morale is up, and everybody adopts it. It's easy to use, those types of things. But I think the first step is understanding what your people do today, how they use it, and how you can make it even better for them going forward. So
I think morale is an important thing because you want to be excited about it. Mm-hmm. You've identified that you have a problem. You're looking for a solution. If you can convince everybody that you are moving towards something positive and this is about growth and change and improvement, then this isn't a sad experience. Yeah. It's a good experience.
Yeah, and I think as long as you're communicating right throughout that whole process, Because when people see things like this, they see change, they start looking
You know,
around. They're like,
right.
whoa, am I losing my job?
Right,
what's
of course.
going on? What are we doing that I'm concerned? And if you communicate that from the beginning, what's happening, you'll get the buy-in, and you'll get the people that want to really commit to adopting and using this because they can see a future.
Right.
So,
especially, I've had examples where people were afraid of adopting new software because they were afraid that it would make certain people within the company irrelevant for that reason. And so I've worked with them to try to find, if you understand that it could potentially make this person irrelevant, that is a good thing, because now you have this person who's a strong and capable person that has been useful to you. And now you can put them in a completely new role using this new software to find out ways that you can improve the whole entire growth of your company.
Mm-hmm.
And that a better software package gives you more options to take your company to the next level. And you have a perfect person who does not need to be hired or trained or vetted to then bring on board for that role. You have the perfect person already for that at times too.
Right, because good software makes good people better, and bad software makes good people worse.
Or make them quit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you think
Whatever comes first.
You think about where software is headed at the end of the day. You're not doing these menial tasks of data, manipulating data, or doing data stuff anymore, right? So that becomes artificial intelligence or AI, whatever you want to call it. That happens and does that stuff automatically, and now people are getting trained for even better jobs, right? And they can parlay that and take that elsewhere.
Absolutely.
But they're getting educated doing things that are at a higher level rather than mundane stuff that the software can do already.
Absolutely.
Which is always good, and they should look at it that way. But again, as long as you're communicating that, you're good. If you're not communicating that, you're going to set fear throughout the organization. And like Scott said, morale. I think you'll lose them in morale, and you don't want to do that when you're making a change.
So speaking of change, it's going to take some time. We know that. How long should I expect? I run an organization. How long should I expect my software change to take?
I mean, it's phases. It's what it really is, phases. The first phase is probably at this point you've already got to the point where you've already made the understanding that you need a change, and that's the hardest step in all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's step one. Step two is then coming up with the requirements of the new software. And that, depending on the size of your organization, could take anywhere from maybe a week or 3 or something, that depending on the number of different people that need to get involved in timing. And then it's, going through the process of finding new software, finding the candidates for your software process, that could take up to a couple different weeks overall. I mean, you can, find the top 5 software in a relatively quick time. And that point is just how much time do you need to spend with each one. Mm-hmm. Then it leads into the whole another step, which really draws out the process, is, moving on to it, because you don't always move on to software all at once. Sometimes it makes more sense to move on in stages. And, if you have a new software that can replace 5 individual softwares, you sometimes might take a phased approach, is phasing out one software at a time. Other times you do a full transplant and you just pick a day and you say, let's go for it, and you cut over. And then even after that, there are the growing pains, I'm often used to describing surgeries, comparing it to, knee surgery or heart surgery. You've been limping along, you're getting winded walking back to your desk to answer your phone, things like that nature. You're running into these issues, and it's going to be hard for the first couple of weeks or first couple of months after this new software where you're laid in bed rest. But once you're on that, you're like in those commercials with people taking those pills and they're jumping up and down and playing with their kids, and you're doing so much you forgot what it was like to operate smoothly. Mm-hmm. And it sometimes takes a couple of months after onboarding a new software to get to that point. Yeah. So the whole process, I think, can take anywhere between 3 to 6 months. But I've had situations where the cutover has been around a month from the time they've investigated to the time they've been adopted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with any of that. I think that's pretty spot on. It just depends on how big you are. I think the adoption piece is the piece for me that can go up to a year.
Over that,
I think 6 months in, you're figuring it all out, and up to a year. And I think what happens is through that process, you got people who are frustrated in the beginning because they used to do it the other way and they remain frustrated. And by the way, the software may not do everything exactly the way they used to do it. Not sure they should even do it the exact same way, right? But that's what's in their mind. And I think, after a year, for sure, 6 months to a year, I think you're getting those champions back on board because they're understanding how to use the software, how it works best for them. And by the way, if there's some things that were left out, if you've got a good software company, they're always updating software and adding new features, and perhaps one was missing. Or if you have a good relationship with them, you can suggest that, and potentially they put it in. And but for me, 6 months to a year that's not the process. I think Will had the process right. I think it's that adoption piece, which is huge. After you make the decision, it's figuring out is this going to work for everybody, and I think it's going to take. And depending which division, right?
Exactly.
Some divisions will pick it up quicker than others. Like for me, accounting is accounting, right? I mean, accounting doesn't change.
A balance sheet is a balance
right.
sheet. Your P&L is a P&L.
So if you've got that, they'll be able to pick up on that a little bit quicker. Although the sales guys, maybe HR, things are a little different than you did before.
Operations, especially.
Yeah. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
So if you expect a return on day one, you're fooling yourself.
Without a doubt.
You're not going to get that. This is an investment, right? And it's like a stock, right? Over time. If you're a long-term investor, that's what you've got. Mm-hmm. You're investing in this long period to make the organization better, right? That's the goal at the end of the day, and to make your employees better, everything better, morale better, everything.
And knowing that probably helps you avoid false promises because they're out there, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now I would like to get into the food portion of this. This is our final segment here. Originally, the question was, what's the best meal for a date? But I want to change that a little bit. What's the best meal for a first date? And I'm going to start by flipping my own. I'm going to start by flipping my own question. Okay. The worst meal for a first date for me is anything that involves noodles. Because I am super self-conscious about noodles, about the way I eat noodles. Yeah, and then if it's like, so if let's say I'm having like ramen and there's a soup component, or let's say I've got spaghetti and there's like a sauce component, I guarantee that's going to go on my face. It's going to go on the table. If I'm wearing a white shirt, it's going on my shirt. So I like to have a couple dates and have know that the person really likes me before I show them the way that I eat noodles.
Yeah, you flip that, all right.
Yeah. So you could do worst meal for a first date or best.
I'm gonna do the best meal. I mean, I'm with you. I kind of take it the way that I would probably do a business meal as well, which is I stay pretty
simple.
Like steak or fish, salad. Things that you don't have to. Like, for the last 3 times I've said something about ribs. Never do ribs.
I thought you were going to say that, but
right, I never do ribs on the first date. But
is that why I lack second dates? Because I constantly go to rib joints.
Yeah, you keep going to ribs first, man. I mean, you got to flip that a little bit. But like a steak, just a kind of a normal dinner. I do like Italian food, so maybe some portion of that. But I'm
just be careful.
Not the noodles and the spaghetti where I'm going.
Do the gnocchis, you have to use a fork without slurping.
It's a good idea.
Steak or fish, both are great.
You know what? I kind of have to agree with Jim on that one for the most part. Is you definitely got to take into account for mass. You have to take into account for what's the taste it leaves in the mouth. You don't want to have something that is overly on garlic or anything of that. I think, things like that, maybe sometimes hamburgers, if I might get a little too messy in the hands, depending on the type of burgers you get. But, you don't want to have something where, especially I was thinking like, sharing foods, like, fondue places. And I think, myself, that's probably a good thing. It's intimate, but I was like, wait a second, what if that other person's, not person who you want to be eating from the same bowl with? And the fact, though, that's actually, I changed my mind. That is a fantastic first date because you will know right then and there whether or not this is a person you want to share food with the rest of your life.
I'm going to extend this conversation a little bit. Only for one thing, because on the radio the other day, there was this debate about who gets to take home the leftovers on a date, on a first date. Was it the person that paid? So the guy paid in this particular case, but she had a dessert that she wanted to take home. Does she get to take that, or does he? There's leftover on the dessert.
Right. So my answer to that one is you originally bought it with the intention of her eating it there, so she might as well just take it home. And let's be real, you've already done it. Just
Bingo. I'm with you on that. I mean, I'm buying it, but it's for you.
Yes.
And I don't get it. The option is if she doesn't want it, she could give it to me. But the option is not that I take it. That's what I was thinking. Although it happened the other way around.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm taking that. What? I was like, wait. What?
Yeah, let me know how that second date went.
Right.
I guess the answer is if you want a second date, she takes it.
Yes.
Right? I guess. Anyway.
And I have no idea how to work that back into software, so I think we're done here.
Just enjoy that.
Yeah, let's quit while we're ahead. Thanks everybody for listening. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast. You can listen to us anywhere podcasts are found, and if you found us, you probably already know that. We'll see you next time. Thanks everybody.
Subscribe.
Okay. Goodbye.